All right, now you should be getting audio. So, good morning, good afternoon, as it may be. I'm Brian Nemhauser. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. You can find us wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or video, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all those places at Hawk Blogger. And yeah, there's going to be some audio glitches the day after coming home. I literally just got off the flight back from LA where it was pouring rain. Come here in Seattle where it's pouring rain. And I want to talk to all you guys. That was my first priority. So got a lot to share. We'll go over some of the Grey Zabel injury news right at the top. Hopefully some good news there. I will be going to the Mike Macdonald press conference in about 90 minutes. So after this show is over, we'll hopefully get some more confirmation of good news there. And if you're wondering why the people are saying the volume's kind of low, I don't know. Nothing's changed on my side, at least that I know of. So I will turn it up a little bit. Hopefully that helps if you were having trouble hearing. For folks that are on YouTube and wondering why it is in subscriber only mode in chat, it's because, you know what? I find that days after games against division rivals who are feeling good again about themselves, trolls like to invade, and they have no interest in being here other than just to cause mayhem and be assholes. And my solution is, unless you're a subscriber and you've been a subscriber for a while, you don't get to be part of these chats. So we'll pick and choose when we do that, but it's another good reason to choose to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so that you get to hang out and be part of what we're doing here. We're up to, I think almost 29,000 subs and growing. We'll get to hopefully 30,000 before the end of the season. And I'm pretty sure, I can't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure I promised that when we get to 30,000 subs on YouTube, I will give away another set of tickets to a Seahawks game whenever that happens. So let's see how soon we can get that to happen. And maybe we can get you tickets to that Colts game that's coming up, or the next Rams game that's coming up, if we can get to 30,000 subs here before that happens. All right, I don't want to make people wait, because I was annoyed to have to wait all the way to the end of the Mike Macdonald show on with Brock and Salk this morning about the Grey Zabel news. I will say right before I play this that I thought Brock and Salk did a fantastic job today. I thought the questions they asked were really cool. We got some really good answers from Mike Macdonald. Depending on time and other things, we may get to some of those additionally beyond this Grey Zabel sound, but really good stuff from those guys today. And so here was the question at the very, very end of the show when Mike Macdonald was asked, did you get any news on Grey Zabel? Anything to give you an idea that maybe he avoided a season ender in terms of the injury? And here's what Mike Macdonald said.
I'll say it's optimistic right now. So initial news is really positive, but we gotta let's get out of the fog here before I start making any declarations. But
did you get imaging last night, Coach? Imaging last night or this morning?
Yeah, we're it's this morning. Yeah, I think it's actually happening. Right. So we're going off of right now is like the test, the
ACL test and the initial testing. Yeah,
that's right. So I think he's actually getting imaged as we speak. So,
and then
all right. So if you didn't hear that, optimistic was the first thing he said. But, Mike's been bit a couple of times by, hey, I think we're going to have Devin Witherspoon back at practice, and then he's not. And so he's going to be cautious about that. But initial tests, optimistic, very, good news. And they're waiting for final imaging. I'm hoping that we get some of that information at the press conference here after this show concludes. And if that's the case, honestly, man, that is a mood lifter after what was a tough loss for the Seahawks yesterday. There's no way around it. It was a tough loss. It was a really big game, a lot on the line for individuals, for the team, for the franchise, and to not only lose the game, but potentially lose your prize first-round pick on your offensive line, who's been really a big part of your season, would have been crushing, and it still might be. So we still have to, until we get final word, we'll just wait and see. But that's not what I expected. It was what I was hoping for, but it's not what I expected. We also, I give credit to Pro Football Doc on Twitter. Most of the Twitter docs are terrible. Don't listen to them. They're just engagement farmers. They are wrong constantly. But he's pretty good. He was a former NFL doc. And for the most part, I've found he's the reason that Twitter docs became a thing, because he got a huge following from it. And he last night, he was guessing it was an MCL sprain and that they'll, wait to see more. But based on what he saw, maybe could avoid IR. I don't know. I will say this. The Seahawks have had at least one player go on IR each of the past 4 weeks. So they had been fortunate and in some ways, but unfortunate of late. And back to back, you have both North Dakota State guys on your offensive line. The offensive line had been intact until last week. Then you lose Jalen Sundell. A similar situation down near the goal line, gets rolled up on. He's on IR. And, I would assume even if Grey Zabel is not seriously hurt, I would not expect him to play this week and maybe for a few weeks. IR might happen. Who knows? But if he were to go on IR, let me just double check my math here, schedule wise. He would miss the Titans game, the Vikings game, the Falcons game, and the Colts game, which would mean if he went on IR and came back afterwards, he would be back for the next Rams game, a Thursday night game. Now, that's a short week, so it's possible that if it's IR, he'd miss that game as well. But that's kind of where we are. So initially some good news there, but like I said, got to wait and see for final word. So let's talk about this game. I've seen a lot of different reactions to this game. I wrote my morning after column up on hawkblogger.com. If you haven't seen it already, make sure you check it out there. And look, I knew there was going to be a spectrum of reactions to this one. There were going to be folks who are going to be like, all right, Sam Darnold's exactly who we thought he was. We're screwed. There was going to be the far end of the spectrum that were like, have been silent for weeks, and then they're going to come out of the woodwork and just tell everybody, see, I told you so. Those are the worst from my perspective. There's going to be other folks that were going to say, okay, we can't beat a good team. We've lost to every good team we've played. We're frauds. Like, there are going to be people that say that. There's also going to be people probably on the other end of the spectrum that were like, if one thing changes, we win this game, and we were the better team, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm probably always going to be more towards that end of the spectrum, to be honest. If you guys will listen, you'll know that about me. But here's where I am, like a little less than 24 hours later. I think that people are getting it wrong about Sam Darnold. And I don't know that they're getting it wrong in a way that is better or worse. What do I mean by that? Well, everyone's saying Sam Darnold can't play in big games. He can't handle the pressure. And I get it. I get why people would say that. But here's the thing. First of all, Sam Darnold has played pretty good in big games, all in all. If you don't believe me, the Packers games last year, people seem to forget that the Packers were just as big of a game as the Lions games were last year. And he was 2-0 against the Packers, and he threw 6 touchdowns and only 2 picks. And you talk to a Packers reporter, they will like roll their eyes. Man, we just couldn't beat that guy. Big game. He played the 49ers in the second game of the season. 49ers were still a wrecking crew back then, and were still expected to be a very, very good team. He beat them, and played well in that game. Threw like a 98-yard touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson in that one. The Texans, who were last year a division winner and had a great defense, he threw 4 touchdowns and no picks against them last year. The first game against the Lions, the same team at the end of the season that everyone's like, hey, the Lions really exposed him. Well, the first time he played them, he had a 103.5 passer rating. And guess what? Seahawks fans of all teams should remember when he came into Seattle on a primetime game, threw 3 touchdowns, no picks, including a game winner to Justin Jefferson. That was an absolute dot. It's not about big games. I wish it was just about big games, because if that was the problem, then it would be about like psychologically kind of how you prep and how you treat everything the same. And like, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it at all. I don't even think it's good teams. He's played good teams and beat good teams. I'd even say this year, the Tampa Bay game, that was a big game. Tampa Bay was like number 1 in the NFC at that point. They came in and the defense for the Seahawks absolutely crapped the bed. He was outstanding in that game. Outstanding in that game. So I don't think it's about big games. I think it's about judgment. And I also think it's about being able to adjust when things start going the wrong way. And the two things are interwoven. What do I mean by that? Like, he is making some bad decisions. And yesterday he made 4 egregiously bad decisions. And I think when you look at like, well, why did he make those bad decisions? On 3 of the 4 passes, pressure played some sort of role in speeding him up. But he's been sped up a lot. Like he's been pressured a lot, I would say. So why was this different? I would also say that I went back, I watched all 13 pressures from the game yesterday on the flight home. And excuse me, they came in a variety of different ways from a variety of different places. I will say this was a rough game for Grey Zabel. He got beat quite a bit. But honestly, everyone on the line had a moment where they got beat. I was only watching the pressures, and generally speaking, they still only got pressured 23% of the time, 28% of the time, something like that, which is not high. It was not like pressure was a major problem the whole game. But here's the thing is, yes, he made some really awful, like, you should have a decision that bad once a season, if ever. He made 4 of those in one game. I'm not gonna paper over that. I'm not gonna apologize for it or anything. Apologize for him for it. But he also made a number of drive-saving plays while under pressure that if he hadn't have made, the Seahawks wouldn't have been close in this game. And if you look over the course of this season, that's happened quite a bit where he makes a play that most quarterbacks don't. And the decision making to even attempt that is at least debatable. And by making those plays, he's won games for the Seahawks. And so it's a quandary for any coach to figure out how to tease out like the really negative decision making cycle that happened there from the playmaker that exists. And the other thing that's at play there is Mike Macdonald's attitude is very clear on this. He has said from the first day of OTAs with Sam Darnold, like he kind of gave Mike Salt crap about saying, is there a quarterback competition? And he's like, well, that's exactly the environment I want to create in practice, is that guys are second guessing anytime they make a mistake. Like, I want them playing scared, in practice. No, I want them out there ripping it and making aggressive, assertive, confident choices. And if it's a bad decision, we'll fix it in between, right? And again, last night after the game, Mike Macdonald's message to him was go out there and rip it. Like, don't hesitate. He wants his quarterbacks to be aggressive. But here's the thing. Mike Macdonald's never lost a game with the Seahawks when his team has failed to turn the ball over, when they have 0 turnovers. I think it's only happened like 5 times between Gino last year and Sam this year. There's been a lot of turnovers. And I don't know if the solution here is for Mike Macdonald to turn into Pete Carroll and do what Pete did to Russell in 2020 during the Let Russ Cook year, when after a bunch of interceptions in Buffalo, Pete Carroll was like, all right, no more cooking. We're going to go to a very conservative offense. You're going to run the ball, run, pass, and we're just going to deal with that. And the offense cratered the back half of that year. The defense got better, remarkably, but the offense never really recovered. I don't think it's just because Pete made them get conservative, but Pete's message was don't make mistakes and we'll be better off for it. Mike's message right now is don't worry about mistakes. Go make plays. And I think that's the better message. And I loved let me play this for you. I think this is Mike Macdonald talking about Sam Darnold's day against the Rams, and this is a good view into his perspective. It might be not exactly the right timing, but it's going to be close.
Be somewhat even better prepared and more ready to play and start faster in the games like that. But yeah, I just that's Ernest though. I mean, that's who he is. Freaking beast. Awesome guy.
Here's a question from.
With all that being said, how would you assess Sam's day yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you want me to say. Like we need Sam to play. We can't turn it over 4 times, and Sam knows that, and but you can't just say, like, the tricky part is you can't just say you can't turn it over. What kind of coaching is that? Like, don't turn the ball over. What? Well,
wait, I gotta just pause that. That is exactly what Pete Carroll says, but go on.
Do you want me to throw it on time, with precision to where the quarterback, yeah, okay, well, that could end up in a pick, So was that but that was a good decision. So I think we've got to go back and look at, like, the decision criteria and the timing of play, like, go back to the inputs behind it. And I think we'll find some solutions that way. It's just like, coaching's like, just, we joke like the sheriff in the weight room, we always joke, like, just lift the weights. Like, well, how, like, how do you want me to? So, run it better. It's like, well, we need to execute better. Well, how do you execute better? Like, what, let's actually dive into this thing rather than just take the easy, lazy way out.
I love that from Macdonald. And, I think that I think this also gets into it, but let me just play. I can't remember. So sorry if I'm going to play something that's wrong, but this is talking about aggressiveness. And I think this is about Sam's aggressive.
But it was through the lens of how we are going to operate. I'm actually doing the gym hand signals right now.
I'm talking about Jim Harbaugh.
But that's probably a little bit of Ernest, right? I mean, that's why you love that.
Yeah.
And because he's got his back. And I'm sure your conversation with Sam, either throughout or after, or is, hey, man, I don't want you to be checked down, Charlie. You can't play this game scared to make a mistake, right? I mean, I'm sure some of your messaging echoed some of that, of like, it's just how you navigate. Maura asked like last hour, like how you navigate that aggressiveness line. You do it as a play caller. You've got to do it as a quarterback. Like, how do I navigate when to pull the trigger, when to not, when that window's too tight, when it's not, right? Like, that's kind of the communication game, I would think.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, in real time, like, we're not asking to, I know I'm not like, hey, navigate the decision criteria better. Like, I'm not, that's not what we're saying. I'm telling them, hey, freaking keep ripping it, bro. Like, we're good. We got you. We needed that. No, I mean, I don't like. Point being is we needed him to have that same mentality because ultimately, we're putting a tough spot there on -1 yard line. But for us to go win the game, we're going to have to go move the ball down the field, and for the most part, we did that. So
Is that about the best?
So, I think all that's really illustrative of where Mike Macdonald's head is on this. And he's kind of talks about the fact that they're going to look at the decision criteria. They're going to kind of dissect how he got to where he was to make those decisions. And the most optimistic thing, I'll say two things that to me are optimistic in this situation. One, Sam Darnold was sacked 9 times the last time he faced the Rams. And I said the same thing to Jeff Simmons last night on the post-game show, which was, this is not, Jeff kept saying this was like last year's game. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was nothing like last year's game for Sam against the Rams. Those 9 sacks were not a lot of them were not his fault. And they were not something that he could have made a big difference in. This game, I felt like all the decisions were his fault, and he could have made. I thought this was much, much worse than last year's game in Minnesota. But the optimistic thing, getting back to the optimistic thing, is that Sam took that game, and the lesson he learned from it was, I need to get rid of the ball quicker. I need to be more decisive. He then shaved a half a second off of his time to throw in an off season. It's huge. He went from one of the slowest time to throw guys to one of the fastest time to throw guys. And guess what? He is the least sacked quarterback in the NFL this season. The least sacked quarterback in Seahawks franchise history through 11 weeks. That's not nothing. And a lot of it has to do with him. So he's made that adjustment. He also, I asked him after the game against Houston, where he made, I think, 3 terrible decisions on one play and got that touchdown, the strip sack touchdown. And I said, well, how do what went on there? What did you take from that? And he's like, I've got to be more aware of the situation, and noted that I just got to throw the ball away, make a quicker decision, whatever. I loved his answer there. And guess what? The next time he was in that situation, that's exactly what he did. He got rid of the ball more quickly. So he's shown an ability to actually take information in, learn from it, and try to adjust. So that's one piece of optimism. The other piece of optimism is, I think that these coaches have shown that they're pretty freaking good at what they do. The offense has been very good. The quarterback play up until yesterday was, quote, MVP level. This is a very, very good football team, and I think that they're getting very good coaching. And so I do believe this notion and process that they've got of, okay, we're going to look into how you got into those situations, and we're going to figure out how to keep you from those. I believe that that's real and that they can help. I would also say that now that the Seahawks have some idea of how the Rams are going to approach them and what things really triggered, it's like going to a doctor's office and not having any symptoms. You're like, I swear I'm sick, or this is hurting. And they're like, well, you're saying it's fine now. I can't figure it out. Well, now they got some symptoms. They got some pretty clear things that are on the table to go ahead and diagnose. And they're like, oh, this is your problem. And it doesn't mean that they can go and come up with the exact right formula to fix it. But I think there's some pretty clear things that they'll be able to look at and say, all right, we got to do this a little differently, or, your keys have to change on this, or, here's your menu for how to handle those situations. So I think those are some optimistic things in that situation. The pessimistic side is, you have a guy that was like, okay, you're not getting rid of the ball. You're getting sacked too much. Now he's not getting sacked at all. And he's preferring throwing the ball away. Throwing the ball to the other team or forcing it into a tight window over just throwing the ball away or taking a sack. He will never take a sack. He'll do anything to avoid a sack at this point. And that's a lot. Like, it's clear that it's not natural for him. Like, the process of making that really good decision consistently is not natural for him. He's had turnovers throughout his career because he's had trouble navigating this specific issue. So to think that all of a sudden they're going to fix it after it's been with him for all this time is probably naive, or at least, a little bit naive. Maybe it's a lot naive, maybe it's a little bit naive. And helping someone with better judgment is not easy. I think the bigger thing is, how do you change, like, he also, not from a judgment perspective, but from a adjusting, like, he can learn between games, but is he able to learn during a game? Like, how can you go from making one bad throw like that to doing it 4 times in a game? That's happened to him multiple times, where he gets into these spirals and he can't get out of them. And that's a really hard problem, because, like, to the point that Mike Macdonald was making, if you try to take the aggressiveness out of him, guess what? You don't score that touchdown to bring him within 2. You don't nearly get into field goal range to win. And let's be honest, if the punt didn't go out at the 1-yard line, I think the Seahawks probably win that game. So, and they do it on the back of Sam Darnold and his ability to be aggressive and lead them down the field. That's what I'm saying. This is like I wish it was as simple as he's a choke artist in big games. That's what everyone's going to say, whatever. That's just, the evidence is not there to support that. I think it's a tougher problem than that. The other side of this for me is the defense is so damn good. It's so good. And you don't need Sam Darnold to be an MVP for them to be a Super Bowl contender. He can be Jalen Hurts, who largely hands the ball off. Now, Jalen Hurts has legs that he does other things with, but you go through his playoff run last year, that was not, like, other than the Super Bowl, he did not put up a lot of big numbers through the air. That was won with defense and the run game. And you might say, well, the run game hasn't been good enough. Run game was plenty good enough yesterday to win that game if they didn't have the turnovers. And so that, to me, comes back to a Mike Macdonald. He's got to figure out if his philosophy in this case, is this one of those principles that you don't change? Or is it something that you can actually adjust and that's flexible? Because there is a path here where the Seahawks, for certain games at least, maybe not all games, but, like, I don't think you need to do it against Tennessee necessarily, where the Seahawks get a little bit turtleish, get into their shell, say, you're not going to be able to beat our defense. We're going to make a few big plays with JSN and Sam. We're going to have a couple shots. We're going to largely stay as a running team. And if we have to punt it 6 times, so be it. And we'll win 17-10 or 17-3 or whatever. Like, that style of play is out there and available for this team. But it's different than the way they're playing right now. Mike wants them to be more aggressive. Clint Kubiak has wanted them to be aggressive. Sam wants to be aggressive. So I think strategically that's going to be something that's going to be, I'll be curious to see how that goes. I have another thing there relative to kind of principles and how Mike Macdonald goes about things that stood out to me a little bit in this game. One, I mentioned this on the post-game show last night, but he says all the time, process over results. And he knows that's the reality. You got to focus on the process. Then they have the tush push with AJ Barner, and the first time it doesn't work, they don't run it anymore on short yardage. Like, that was a little results over process for my taste. And I think that's not great when the team gets that message from the coach where like maybe even inadvertently, oh, it didn't work. Well, we're not going to do that anymore. Like that's I think that's counter to all the other messages Mike Macdonald has given. The other thing I'd say here is Mike talked about on the Brock and Salk show this morning that there were some times where the model for whether they should go for it on fourth down said they really should go for it or they really shouldn't. And he in this game felt very differently. And so you have to go with your gut. Well, all the research says that's a really bad way to do it. I mean, humans are proven to be very bad at predicting things and making those kinds of decisions. And that's why these models exist, to take human error somewhat out of the decision. Doesn't mean you should just play it exactly by the model every time. But if you're going against a strong go and you're choosing to not go, that should be a pretty rare occurrence, I think. If you're a person like Mike Macdonald, who is smart, certainly knows the numbers, understands the philosophy behind it, has put the time in and energy in to have that information at his fingertips. I don't love the idea that, you know, he is entering in like a little too much human interaction with that process, where it could be a really simple thing of like, we're just going to go. And it also, I think, cuts against this we're going to be aggressive, let it rip mentality everywhere else. But then with the decisions that he makes, sometimes he's being conservative against data that says he should be aggressive. I don't love that. I think that that's worth reflecting on and maybe, you know, examining his process there a little bit more. So those are a couple things that stood out to me. I see we've already got some super chats, so I want to get to those in a second. I will say, I'm not sure. I think we have a couple tickets left to the Real Hawk Talk Live in Nashville this Saturday. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have a bunch of fun. We got a VIP lounge, and all the information's out there. The link to get tickets is in the description of the video. You can also, if you want, use this QR code here that I just put on the screen. That will get you the link to the tickets. And hopefully there's a couple still left if you want to go. But it's very, very close to selling out. There was only 6 tickets left this morning, and I think I've heard from at least 4 people that they've bought since then. So if there's any left, there's just a couple. So if you want to hang out with Dana and Evan and Jeff and Josh and Derek and I, this is your chance to do it. It should be fun. It should be a lot of fun. That'll be Saturday night before the game on Sunday. All right. And then a couple other things here. If you haven't taken advantage of the Simply Seattle deal, now's a great time to do it. We've got so much great gear, and the Mariners signed Josh Naylor. So that Nails shirt is better than ever. Go get your Josh Naylor shirt. Go get your Mariners gear. Get your Seahawks gear. Whatever Seattle sports gear you want, SimplySeattle.com is the place to get it. Tomorrow, I will talk to folks about some really cool charitable stuff that we're doing with Simply Seattle. You guys know that we want to keep the charity as part of this channel and everything we're doing. So Simply Seattle's right there with us. We're going to do that starting tomorrow. But code HawkBlogger15 gets you 15% off. You also can go to jkboots.com/hawkblogger. Best place to go to get the best boots you're ever going to get for yourself or someone else. Really an awesome, awesome holiday gift. You will make somebody very, very happy. You put jkboots.com/hawkblogger into your browser. That will get you your own special promo code for your own special deal. And of course, grab the Sleeper app if you haven't already. Great place to go to get your fantasy football information, get your NBA stats. All the great stuff is there. And if you use promo code HAWKS, you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, so let's get to some of these super chats. First one up here. We've got Hawks Flock, I believe. As strange as it sounds, Ernest Jones' defense of Sam in the postgame was maybe my favorite thing I've seen from this team all year. This team is developing a us versus the world mentality, which I love. I don't disagree. So this is a good segue, and I'll come back to this, but I think that the leadership that emerged there, I think that moment could be the defining moment in the season. That probably sounds a little silly right now, but I've very, very rarely heard a player do what he did in that moment. And what was talked about less, and I don't know if anyone else has covered this, but the way that the press room was set up, there's a long, usually they walk through a door and you don't see anything, but this was like a long hallway. And so the person who was coming off the stage from their press conference passes by the person coming on. And so Sam had just finished his press conference and he's walking off as Ernest is walking on. And they're in the hallway before they even get into the room. I happen to be over there or near there. And Ernest looks right at Sam as Sam's walking by him. He's like, I got you. And then he walked up and delivered that message. And Ernest was pissed because they lost that game. I think that game meant a lot to him. But he also, I think, was pissed at some of the things that he felt he could have done differently. And I think that he, to me, is just an unbelievable leader within that group. The energy he brings, the intelligence he brings, the authenticity he brings. And that message coming from a defensive leader to the quarterback who had just turned the ball over 4 times. I think that's the kind of environment Sam Darnold needs to, if he's ever going to get past whatever these issues are that are causing him to turn the ball over as much as he does. He's going to need that kind of environment, as opposed to, remember the 6-6 tie bit with the Cardinals all those years ago with the LOB Russell Wilson era team, where the defense just absolutely gave their entire bodies to that game. Such a physical game. And Jason Myers missed kicks and Russell Wilson had turnovers and the offense just let him down. You could feel the animosity from that defense toward their quarterback. And it wasn't just that game, but I think that was this thing that was just boiling. That's not what's going on here. And I just thought that was I think that could end up being something that we hear from the team and from other players, being a little bit more brazen, being a little bit more protective and circling the wagons. And I'm here for it. I think it's going to be part of a really cool story. And I think Ernest is going to be right at the middle of it. All right. Brent says, Brian, I'm starting correctly find the terminology to describe why we really like you. You have the feel of a healthy therapist. We all feel lucky found to process our investment in the Hawks. Thank you, Brent. That's nice. For what it's worth, I initially went to school to be a sports writer, and then I changed to be a sports psychologist. My mom's a psychologist, so I do have some therapy genes in me, and I need to counsel myself after most of these games across my life. So I'm happy to help others. Brent is back with, this defense is elite. Say we win it all, and the wins that would imply over the Rams, this will make a cinematic redemption arc, I believe. I agree. I think there is an absolute story arc waiting there. And I appreciate the super chats from you, Brent, and from Hawks Flock. All right. So I mentioned some other things that kind of stood out to me in this game. So I don't know that enough people are probably they're not looking for more reasons to be annoyed about this game, but the red zone was such a huge part of this. And the Seahawks start out holding the Rams in the red zone. It was an unbelievable way to start, especially after that terrible call early on Devin Witherspoon. Excuse me. And so they stopped him in the red zone the first time. And then the Rams went 3 for 3 the rest of the game in the red zone. For as good as the defense was, that was one thing that did not go well for them. On the other side, Seahawks started off 0-3 in the red zone and finally scored and ended up going 1 for 4. Not going to win a lot of games when you give up 75% red zone and you only score 25% red zone. It's very simplistic, but that's just truthfully, that was a bigger factor in this game from a technical perspective than the turnovers. And that's you can kind of debate it. The Rams only scored on 2 of the 4 turnovers from Sam Darnold. But the fact that when the Rams scored, they scored touchdowns as opposed to field goals, it's a big thing. And so the defense, as great as it was not perfect. And I'm not blaming the defense, so don't get this twisted. I'm just saying, realistically, that was a problem. It was really the only problem for the team, other than the run defense early in the game. And on the Seahawks side, that was a place where the Seahawks, they had over 400 yards offense. They moved the ball pretty well, but ending up with 3 field goals in the red zone. Now, maybe this gets back to the Mike Macdonald thing about should he have been more aggressive. I think in most of those cases, it wasn't like when Sean McVay was going for it, it was like 4th and 1. Actually, I want to pull that up. Let me pull that up because I'm curious about this. Give me a second. I have it up here somewhere. All right. So, play-by-play. Okay. So, touchdown. So the first one came on a 4th and goal at the 1-yard line. All right. So not a tough decision for him. The second one came on a 4th and 1 at the Seattle 35-yard line. And that's when Kyron Williams broke open the big 34-yard run. So, that was it wasn't like he was at the 1-yard line, but it was a 4th and 1, not like a 4th and 3 or something like that. I think Mike Macdonald would have gone for it in the same situation. And then after that, I think that was the only 2 4th downs that turned into points, at least. So both of them were 4th and 1. For the Seahawks, let's go back and look at their 4th down choices, their field goal choices in the red zone. Okay. So first one, this was after they were down 7-0. They were at 4th and 8 at the 39-yard line. So I don't think they were going to go for that. That didn't make sense. Then they get down to 4th and 8 at the Rams 12. That's not like I don't think that's an obvious situation that you should go for it. You were down at that point 14-3. So I didn't think that was a problem. And then finally, the last one, I thought right before the half, a little bit of question mark about whether they let too much time run off the clock and kind of forced their hand. They ended up with a 4th and goal at the 3-yard line. That's the only one to me that you could kind of debate about should they have been more aggressive. But I think that that's less to me about the 4th down decision and more about the clock management that left them with only 11 seconds at 3rd and goal. And also, they weren't in a real rush on 2nd and goal at the 7. I feel like there was a chance for them to maybe pick some different plays. But generally speaking, I don't have a huge issue with that. But those certainly played a factor. The other thing that I kind of walk away from this game with is, and this is the lasting one to me, Mike Macdonald has gone 2 games against Sean McVay that were real games. The Week 18 game last year was a nonsensical game. Rams didn't play their starters half the time. The Seahawks defenders and team in general knew that the game didn't matter and were making business decisions as they should. And so the two games that have counted, really, Mike Macdonald's made Matt Stafford and Sean McVay look really bad. And they're like a combined 5 for 24. What is it? I've got it right in front of me here somewhere. 5 for 24 on third downs over those two games. Everyone was just going gaga about the 13 personnel that Sean McVay was using, the 3 tight ends. And Sean McVay tried that in this game, and Mike Macdonald held him to 2.7 yards per play. Like, that was not a factor in this game, at least positively for the Rams. They only had 249 yards of offense. And I have to do this because I'm just curious about it, but I haven't even looked that up. But I don't think that's probably happened to Sean McVay at home very often. 240 yards of offense for the Rams at home. Let's go back to see this one. All right. Total yards less than 250. And team is the Rams. You guys might not care about these things, but this is the kind of stuff I just geek out on and can't help myself. And the game is at home. All right. If we're just looking for games where you have less than 250 yards at home. Last time it happened was 2023 against the Eagles. Then 2022 against the 49ers. Happened twice in 2022. Happened against the Bills as well. Happened against the Giants in 2020 and then twice in 2019. He was 1-5 in those games before yesterday. He's now 2-5 in those games. I also looked up, well, this is a separate aside, but randomly, the amount of times a team has had a 165-yard or greater yardage margin. The Seahawks had like 414 yards. They had 249, whatever. So they had a bunch more yards. They got sacked no times. The Seahawks did. Their time of possession was over 37 minutes, which is a lot. And their opponent had less than 12 first downs, and they lost. The last time that happened was actually the only other time that happened in the history of the NFL was 2004, when the Denver Broncos lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars 6-7. And so, like, it was just a really weird game. It was just a weird game. But point being, getting back to the coaching stuff, the Seahawks have a guy that's ready to lead this team for years to come. And what we like, the fact that we can feel more and more confident that Mike Macdonald, like, you might say, well, we already knew that. But think about, that was a bit of a question. People were saying, think about the Green Bay game last year. Okay, Mike Macdonald has his guys. The team had won 4 in a row. The defense was humming. Then Green Bay came in and LaFleur completely outcoached. And the team was outplayed by the Packers last year. So I don't know that you can say, I could say Kevin O'Connell ultimately beat Mike Macdonald last year in a big game. And in this one, I think Mike Macdonald got the better of Sean McVay. I don't think there's any way to really say otherwise, other than the score, right? Like, I'm talking about offense, the offense versus the Seahawks defense, not overall coaching. And I think that's a really freaking big deal. Most people think Sean McVay is the best coach in football, and you've got a guy that has proven that he can go toe-to-toe with him. I think that that's a really big thing. And then on the flip side, Clint Kubiak, I think there's more there to kind of pick on. I think Chris Shula got the better of him overall. I think that the game plan that the Rams came in with was good. And I think it confused the Seahawks. I think it took the Seahawks a while to get going. I think for a lot of the time, JSN was kind of getting taken away while also the rest of the guys were also getting taken away. And it felt like the Seahawks didn't have a great counter for that. At the same time, that's a little weird to say considering the Seahawks had so many more yards than the Rams, and still, despite 4 turnovers, still had a chance to win. But I look at the red zone, and the Seahawks did not have solutions down there, and that's one of the situations where I think that's where coordinators make their money. And so I put a lot of that on Clint Kubiak not being able to turn what could have been touchdowns into field goals instead. And before that game, he had been excellent. He had been excellent in the red zone. One of the best red zone teams in football coming into that game. So this was actually, one of only a couple games all year where he's been less than 50% in the red zone. And most of the time he's been over 65% in the red zone. So it doesn't mean that I'm like down on Clint Kubiak, but I think it is something that I think this was the first game I really felt like since the San Francisco game that he got out coached. I don't think it was as bad as the San Francisco game, but I think he's going to be going back to the lab and trying to figure out, okay, what do we change here? I got a couple more super chats. Let me get to those. Adam the Islandson says, I'm tuning in late, but I think it's worth noting that our quarterback was able to drive us down the field despite mistakes to put us in position to win. On to the next. Super excited to meet the crew in Nashville. Glad you're going to be there, Adam. It will be fun. And thanks for the comment. I think you're right on that. TK Bear, empty in the super chat, but thank you for that and appreciate you supporting the show. So I also would say I got it from TK the Bear now. All right. On the Rams' last drive, they would have saved time if they took the timeout before the 2-minute warning instead of letting 6 to 7 seconds run off. Yeah, I had more of an issue with them not taking the timeout on the final drive when they passed the ball over the middle of the field. And I can tell you exactly how many seconds. Well, I actually can't probably here, but so the Seahawks got the ball, even though it was at their 1 yard line. They got the ball with 1:41 to go and 1 timeout. That's not like no time. That's a decent amount of time. But there was a play. Okay, here it is. So they had the ball with 40 seconds. It was 3rd and 6 on their own 18, and Sam Darnold passed the ball over the middle to JSN for a first down. There were 40 seconds when that play started. The next play, because they didn't take a timeout and they passed it over the middle of the field, started with 22 seconds. So that took 18 seconds off the clock. And if you look at the difference between every other play, you're talking about like 6-7 seconds going off the clock between plays. So that was a big one to me, that they chose to not take a timeout there. If you pass over the middle with that little time, I think you got to take a timeout and then force yourself to use the edges of the field. They made a strategic choice to say, well, we're going to make the Rams not know where we're going to go with the ball by keeping the timeout, because the Rams won't be able. If you take the timeout, the Rams are basically just going to defend outside the hashes because they know you can't go over the middle. So kind of like, I get it, but personally, I think that was a questionable decision. And then the other big one was Sam Darnold on 1st and 10 at the Seattle 38, 17 seconds to go. He scrambles around, tries to make a completion. 7 seconds go off the clock instead of just throwing the ball away. And it was a first down. You didn't need to waste that time. So combined, that's at least 20 seconds that you lost there that I don't think you had to lose. And I do think that's the difference potentially in the game. Okay. Whoops. We got another one. 12-1 says, I generally don't think the Rams were the better team here. We kept Stafford off the board for the entire second and third quarter. Felt in control at the end of the game, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that's a fine take. I'm troubled by this idea that the Seahawks were the better team. The quarterback's part of the team. The red zone plays are part of the team. And the Rams were better. Like, the Rams came in with a better plan. They started faster. The Seahawks were playing catch up the whole time. And I thought the Rams defense was very good for most of that day. And those 4 turnovers, the way I kind of, the game I compare it to is when Mike Macdonald, ironically, went in to face the 49ers his last year with the Ravens, and they turned Brock Purdy over like 5 times or something. It was like a ton of turnovers on Thanksgiving, I think the game was. The 49ers moved the ball all over the field that game. They had like 450 plus yards. And so you have 49ers fans that are like, yeah, we would have, if we played them again, we would have beat them. It's like, nah, like Mike Macdonald and that team had you confused and had your quarterback making some really bad choices. They beat you. And I think you got to tip your hat. The Rams are really freaking good. They're really, really good. They don't have almost any flaws. I think a very quiet part of this game was their offensive line performed pretty well against the Seahawks defensive line. Yes, the Seahawks defensive line made a ton of plays, ultimately stalemated them or stymied them. But like, this was the first offensive line I think that has stood up to the Seahawks defensive line. You could say the Tampa Bay game, but I kind of put that a little bit more on the Seahawks. This one, I thought the Rams offensive line acquitted themselves pretty darn well in this one. So I thought the Seahawks were missing Jaron Reed a little bit in this game. I think that was, I felt his absence. I also felt like Leonard Williams did not have as much of an impactful game. It wasn't like it was a bad game, but he was not as ever present as he's been in some of these other games. So, well, where I'll agree with you is by like a lot of measures, the Seahawks outplayed the Rams overall. And as we've talked about, there's all these little things that if they had changed, the Seahawks would have probably won. But I still give the Rams credit. Their quarterback didn't make any mistakes. Their defense made key plays in key moments. They were the better team. If they had won that game 21-19 and Sam Darnold had no turnovers or 1 turnover, then, you know, I don't know. I think we'd feel better. Maybe we'd feel worse. I don't know. Maybe we'd just be like, there's just another game that we couldn't beat the Rams. So it's I find myself feeling pretty even after that game. I'm pretty centered. I don't feel like I don't feel like the sky's falling. I haven't lost confidence in the Seahawks. But my focus is, all right, that's a pretty big issue that Sam Darnold has continued to show, and that's going to limit how far you can go. If you don't think a Vic Fangio defense with the Eagles would be able to potentially give Sam the same kind of problems, or maybe even the Lions with, you know, some of the people they have on the defensive line, and depending on if they get anyone back in their secondary, there's some teams that you're going to face that could really give you trouble. So that's kind of where I'm at, but it all starts back at what I started the show with, other than the Grey Zabel news, is what's the style of play that they're going to be focusing on the rest of the way? If they're going to continue to be aggressive, I think you're playing with fire. And I think it's going to take some really, really good coaching to figure out how to stay aggressive and avoid the turnovers. I don't think it's obvious how to do it, but I'm also not an NFL coach, nor do I try to pretend I am one on YouTube. So that, I think, will cover it for today's episode. I'm going to get ready for the Mike Macdonald press conference, and I will be back with you all tomorrow with Matt Hasselbeck for Hasselbeck Tuesday morning. We'll talk about this game. We'll talk about Nashville. We'll get some tips from him on where to go, and see you all then. Until then, have a great rest of your Monday. I'm Brian Nemhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.